How's it going? This is Rick at Ralph, and I'm here to present you a video on how to interpret pawn structures. This is something that I want to cover because pawn structures in this game are somewhat complicated, due mostly to the fact that you can start off with 12 different positions of your royal pieces. Now, it's almost impossible to just go in depth of all 12 positions, so the better thing to generally do is to understand how each piece functions in its various positions. So, we'll start off with a high king and a high lion to get a feel for these ones. Now, these two pieces are the slowest in terms of supporting the pawn structure, and this creates two interesting effects on your center. Now, the first thing this does is allows you to form a more stable center on your side of the board, because your opponent will not be able to reach into your position so easily and shake up your pawn structure and or create any kind of meaningful exchanges. The drawback is that when you start extending to your opponent's side of the board, they will have more play against you and will be able to affect your pawn structure without you having as much control over the situation. So we'll just give a few examples. Now, the lion in a high position does pretty well in openings where you clear one of your bishops. And so the concept is that to make some sort of adjustment for your bishop so that the lion can come in on the center, and the lion also supports this short-term gain in the center. So your side of the board is very solid. So your opponent, this is a queen pawn opening. Your opponent can react to this in a few types of ways in this short position like this. So your opponent could go here, and this would be a flank defense. This is the queen's prince defense. And this immediately shuts down any sort of early advancement, because obviously you would just be gambiting a pawn, and you probably are not getting this pawn back. It would just be very unlikely. If you do want to try something in the line of a gambit, it would look something like this. You create a double attack. This is a common theme when you have the eagle and the queen placed in this specific position. So this is one of the unique aspects of this exact setup. And the king's always on the left side, so you won't see a mirrored version of any of these positions right here. Each one is unique upon itself. So in this position, this is double attack. So the only move would be to go here, and then the gambit would continue along with you making some sort of move to threaten this pawn. Probably this would be the best, but as you can see, your opponent is going to easily defend this, and since he has a lion cozy in next to his king, you won't really get very far in this position, and you're probably not getting the gambit pawn back. So it's very obvious that you are not advancing this pawn. Advancing one space is a viable possibility right here, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this move at all. This is a good way to make room for your dark squared bishop to come out, and this will be easily supported. So moves like this are perfectly fine, and you're gaining a lot of control over these squares right here. and this would be considered like a center opening, where you're just really going for the hill, which is a chess term for these 4 squares right here. And they call it the hill is always the best spot to control because it allows you to reach into the most spots on the board. So this is one way you could react. You could advance like this. Your opponent advances out their center. Now this is why this is a slow center opening. As you can see, every single move just goes along very slowly, and your opponent's going to want to make exchanges that favor getting the center pawns out of the way from your opponent. So this would be common, and you would want to bring up one of your flank pawns to attempt to disrupt this structure somehow. But any advance you make too early causes the possibility of something like this. And this would be a locked up center, and this is a very common occurrence in openings where the high power pieces aren't involved, and you would see a lot of efforts to try to break down the center. So for instance, go here, your opponent could try something like this and make a pass right here. And obviously white could do the same thing. It's just a matter of taste. But just to create some dynamics. So something like this could be possible. And then white has 2 options. They can either allow this to open. They can allow them to push up, but that's not going to happen. You could take. And this would give free development to black, but you could punish them with this move. And this would force them to go to an undesirable square. So this is a general type of pawn structure you could end up with here, although this is not ideal for white. It has its benefits. One thing you can do now is advance 2 squares and force an en passant and get your own development. And you see a lot of these localized pawn maneuvers in Metamachy. Some people, like more amateur players, will build these ginormous pawn fronts and never really act on them. I'm all for building big pawn fronts, but you always have to keep an eye out to see if there's any meaningful pawn breaks you can make, because as long as the pawn is supported and you end up with some outposts and it's just some meaningful play, that's always a good thing. And this already opens up a lot of tactics, because as you can see, like a move like this is already causing a lot of chaos because the eagle's been opened up and white doesn't really want to move his lion out of the way, because this will cause a position like this where the king's in check, and now all of a sudden the queen just moves out of the way some random square, so let's say here. So now all of a sudden we have this problem where you're not really looking too good, because as powerful as this eagle is, it's not so certain what you can do. And in this position, it's not so bad because white managed to find a pin. So, like I said, this gets really tactical very quickly. So I found a convenient tactic right here to balance things out. But even so, it could be so easy for either side to just mess up right here. So this is some sort of dynamic compensation. I feel like black's still doing okay though, because there's so many open lines that this lion might not actually have a meaningful attack, and this queen is going to be able to bank off of any weaknesses on the queen side, because these pawns will eventually get broken down, and I've already extended my structure. So we see a pretty action-packed game. Nobody's playing for a draw. and both sides got a little bit of compensation. And so that these are the advantages of playing for these early pawn breaks. And but we see that with the high king and the high lion, things don't open up quite as quickly. The pawn breaks can go a lot of ways. And then we see the dynamics of going for the hill too early. So another thing that could be done in a position like this would be to try to find a weak spot in their position. So maybe like go for right here or for here now. So black advances, and now this is a little different than the strategy from before, because before we advanced this pawn and the queen pawn just wedged both sides, but this time we had the prowess to create a staggered position where we were able to attack this center a little bit quicker and give ourselves some extra space for our pieces. And this is ultimately what we're looking for, is to just wedge these pieces in and get a pretty decent position. And this could go a lot of ways, but you generally end up with these strange positions where like one side will have hanging pawns in the center, which a hanging pawn is like the next best thing to an isolated pawn, where these pawns can't really be protected by other pawns, but if they ever start rolling, they could cause a great deal of distress. Although in this position, due to lack of initiative and just the perfect defense that's going on from white against the hanging pawns, these would probably be bad hanging pawns right here. But this is the kind of positional dynamic we're trying to create, and this can go so many ways. But generally, white is going to now try to get the king out of the way and start pointing his pieces at these weaker pawns. So like one really early move we could possibly see would be something like this. So we see the same concept of trying to bank off this eagle coming out, and black would have to counter that. So now there's 2 pieces attacking and 3 pieces defending, and white's gonna have to find a way to like annoy the position somehow. And we see moves like this. So you see the pawn structures are very important because they really set the stage for your openings. Now it is possible in these slower positions to make more meaningful pawn breaks. So let's bring it all the way back to the beginning. So let's say this happens right here. So we could play for this, and we could do something like this. And this is pretty logical. If your opponent tries something like this, we're already kind of winning a small victory here, because we can actually rock the center to the very core by making a move like this. And this is actually what would be considered a viable gambit, because there's really no way that black can get this piece back. We've actually made a meaningful progress in the center. So yeah, this already looks pretty good, and black probably shouldn't have even played that move, but I just wanted to show this. Now if we were to mess up and just make a simple move, we could actually give black an initiative, and this could get pretty bad pretty quick. So yeah, but yeah, this is another more critical way to play, to try to take more of the center easy in the game. Black could go here, and you could just take, and this would be fine. And then you could wedge right here, and black is getting more center pawns, but he's losing pawn support. And this is a good end game strategy because in the end game you generally want to have your wing and your flank pawns exchanged already because I'm sorry, your center and your flank pawns, because your pawns towards the wing actually make better pass pawns because of pieces having to scramble around and go between the two sides of the board. So this would be a more critical way to play with your pawns. And these are actually from higher level players. This should be the caliber of pawn moves you should expect. A lot of those system openings I show, those are a lot of openings that happen in beginner play. And it's not that like the two prints is a bad opening. It's just you won't see the perfect setup. There'll usually be a lot of what they call interim moves where you set up something in between to shake your opponent's foundation. So we play this two prince, and generally it'll actually start off with just one prince coming out, and you'll just try to make a stab at the center somewhere in due time. So maybe something like this, and this would be like a baiting move. This is something I haven't showed as much, but you try to bait your opponent out, and then you play here, and then we're just kind of stabbing at the pawn structure, so black has to support it somehow. And this is actually a more like critical way that we would see the two prince opening play out, and we really want to see black just overextend. So yeah, and every opening will have its little flavor like this. A higher level player is not just going to throw their pawns out there and close all their pieces off. They're going to try to find some sort of development move to accompany their pawn pushes in order to create favorable situations. As you see, unlike the other lines, in this line, black has to think a lot more about how they play and could actually end up in a bad situation if they make the wrong move, because a lot more critical pressure is being put on in this situation. So from here, black would need more piece support and would probably do something like maybe this lion move, trying to solidify, and then we could see an interesting tactic like this, and from here it becomes a battle of wits. So a plan ensues, and then the knight could come down and stop this, but then the bishop could come over here, and we could still go forward with our plan as scheduled. And this would be a more critical way you'd see a two prince defense go off, or system go off. So as you see, some meaningful moves were made, some developments happened. We got to see this concept of the lion developing without the bishop in the way. So now this bishop has more meaningful squares. And if black was to try something like this, let's say, we already have a defense ready for it. So look at that, it can't even penetrate. And we have a lot of moves open to us. Yeah, so these are the types of pawn structures you see. We've spent a lot of time on this, so now we're going to move on to the longer range pawn structures and how those work with the long range pieces behind them. We'll use this position as our example. Now, these type of pawn structures, there can be a lot more dynamic play. So, for instance, when we see this come out, now before there was really no consideration of trying to gambit a pawn, but actually here, if you play the wrong move, your opponent could bring this out and, and bring a early eagle into your position. So this could be annoying because now he's offering an eagle trade, and there's not even much you can do to stop it. Literally, the only move to deny the eagle trade is to actually go here, because you don't want to give up the lion. So, and this is bad. You can't even do this because the eagle goes here. So you see how critical this gets very early. So he just forced an eagle trade, and he traded a center pawn for a flank pawn. So things got very escalated very quickly. Fortunately, moves like this are easy to stop. You could go here, and this would stop the immediate pushing. Another thing you could do is, when the push happens, you could push your own edge, and this would actually give you quite a dominant center, and would cause problems for black now, because black has to start scrambling to defend this. So maybe bring this camel out. No, that doesn't even work. You would have to take some pretty strong measures. At very least, you would need to, yeah, here we go. You have to bring this pawn out. So you see this type of position is very favorable for white. But then we see a lot of pawn antics go down here. But more or less, this looks pretty good for white. Because everything's like, there's a lot more action on the lines, and you see this is getting pressure put on it already. You can start attacking it, and they could support it, but we're going to fix the pawn. So this is no good for black. So black would like to isolate the pawn and try to push it up and trade it. That's not so easy, so black goes here. We can cause more problems like going here. And this all gets really dicey. So this is the type of high volume play you can see out of these long range pieces. Like the possibilities with your pawns are quite endless. So we see something like this. You just play over here. So you're making a pass at this spot. Maybe they try to create a hill. When they do try to create a hill like this, it's not necessarily so good to commit to the idea. So maybe in this situation, we would want to go here. So if they do try to create this hill scenario, you can kind of control where it comes from. So they'll generally want to try some over here, but as you see, the eagle queen combo kind of obliges them to do it this way. And this is better anyways, but yeah, you generally get this really quick exchange in these types of situations, and the exchanges are a lot more critical. And when you see these positions, you always should be looking to try to fix the pawns and try not to create isolated pawns. But you gotta watch out for a lot more moves like this in this game, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So yeah. And we'll just look at one more position and leave you to stew on everything I've talked about today. So this would be the most common type of push for this specific setup. Now if a lion was high with this would still be pretty action-packed. You would just see an early lion move, and it might not complement the queen so well. And in the situations where it doesn't complement the queen, the eagle generally doesn't get a lot of play, will cause a slower position. So just remember that. And now keep in mind that if somebody plays parallel to you in these high volume centers, it is actually quite easy to just advance on them like this, because there's really no way for them to counteract you besides like a gambit. So a gambit like this would be very common, and it would probably be impossible to get this pawn back any sort of way. So let's see, we go here, and just, yeah, like, right off the bat, the only thing you can do to protect this is just go right here. And then all they have to do is somehow lay a threat down on it again. So like just even that would be enough. And yeah, that pawn's gone. You're not getting it back. So this is what you gotta worry about with the pushes, the early pushes, but it's just kind of a matter of taste, because you'll also create a weakness with a semi-open file, and this semi-open file is going to allow you to make lifts. Another way to approach it could be to go right here and then play for something like this, where if they advance, then you can go here and solidify, and if they advance 2 squares, this is always something you gotta watch out for in Metamachy. If they advance 2 squares, you should be able to make your own pawn exchange and get into a good position, because there'll be no good way to defend this. The only way to defend it would be to go here, and then all you really have to do is make a move like this. And this is pretty simple, actually. You just have to advance something to protect this pawn, and then you just harass the queen out of the way, and just, yeah, this is sort of a backwards pawn situation, but this is why you always gotta watch out for these double advances. Another interesting way to handle it would be to advance yourself like this. This gets pretty nutty, but yeah, it's pretty much the same concept. You're trying to isolate and fix the pawns, and eventually the pawn structure will calm down. You'll find a way to advance your structure, but you just watch out with these early advances. This is why we tend to make these shorter advances, but I wanted to show that it is possible to throw your pawns all the way out there when you have these action-packed pieces, and just create lots of interesting effects. So like, if this went unanswered, they could try to gambit it off. In this one, you don't even gotta necessarily do anything. You could just advance, or you could just take, and now you've created a hanging pawn. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, this is Rick and Ralph signing out. Thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions, comments, concerns, critiques, please run them by me. As always, I keep open invitations on Jostly. Just go to the open Jockly, I'm sorry. Just keep go to the open table section and click and hit the invite. See you.